Thailand is filled with incredible Buddhist temples in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but you won't see many that look like this. A pagoda made entirely from recycled Chang beer bottles. To find this glass green giant, we headed down to one of Thailand's most famous islands, a place that every backpacker knows by name. And our journey begins down in the Gulf of Thailand, just 30 minutes away from those iconic shores, on the island right next door. Good morning and welcome back to another day in Thailand, where you join me from the shores of Bang Rak on the island of Koh Samui, and we are about to set off on what I hope will be a very fun adventure. Just ahead of me on the horizon over there is Koh Phangan, which is an island that is probably most famous for being the home of the full moon party, which actually started up again last night. But the north of that island is also home to a much lesser known site in the shape of a pagoda made entirely from recycled Chang beer bottles. Now, I first heard about this place about a year ago when I was still back in the UK, and it's just one of those strange and surreal sites that just made me want to get out there and start exploring again. And it also gives me a good excuse to get back over to Koh Phangan for the first time in over 2 years. So the plan is to jump on the ferry from Big Buddha Pier here in Ban Rak to take us over to Koh Phangan, and on the other side we'll rent a bike and head north in search of this very unique place. So join us, it should be fun. Big Buddha Pier is only about 25 kilometres across the water from Koh Phangan, with a lot of different departure times throughout the day. We opted for the earliest time of 7:50, which was 200 baht for a one-way ticket. And in the week leading up to our departure, we noticed Koh Samui getting much busier for a very obvious reason. The full moon party was back, one night every month when Koh Phangan's Haad Rin beach transforms into an experience like no other. What started as a spontaneous hippie gathering in the 1980s has since become an event that attracts up to 30,000 people. But more recently, its future has become much more uncertain. During the pandemic, there were rumours that the party could be gone for good, after years of frustration from locals about the chaos brought in by the bucket-sipping backpackers, who left behind far worse things than just their dignity. Across the night and into the morning, piles and piles of empty bottles and rubbish could be seen all along the sand. So much that you could even find locals creating sculptures made entirely from lost flip-flops, and even some much bigger structures like our main target for that day. The speedboat from Koh Samui only takes about 30 minutes to get across to Koh Phangan, so it didn't take long before we arrived back on one of my favourite islands in the country. Koh Phangan is Thailand's 5th largest island, home to around 20,000 people, and the vast majority of that population lives in and around the port town of Thonsala, making it the commercial and industrial centre. For years, Koh Phangan has been a popular backpacking destination. Of course, its parties are a huge draw, but really, most of the island is known for its laid-back hippie vibes, full of relaxed coffee shops and restaurants, both of which you can find within a stone's throw of the port itself. But that morning, I had already spotted something else, which was much more unique. Right then, we have made it over to Thonsala, which is the main town here on Koh Phangan. And we actually stayed here about 2 years ago, just up the coast, so it is really good to be back. We now need to find somewhere to rent a motorbike so we can head north towards the twin beaches of Thong Nai Pan. But first of all, I found this little park next to the port, and there's a little place over here that fits very well with today's theming. Despite the aftermath of the full moon party, Koh Phangan is generally a very eco-minded island, which means it wasn't too surprising to see something like this just a few metres away from the port. How cute is this? Well, check this out. I noticed this structure almost as soon as we got off the ferry, and it's basically this sort of greenhouse, but it's not made with any glass, it's made with plastics. So on the roof here you can see loads and loads of plastic bottles that are diffusing the light, and inside it's filled with lots of plants and these little characters, these animals that are made out of bottle caps and old plastic bottles. It's very cool. It's a nice way of turning something that's horrible to look at, like rubbish, into something that's much more pleasing to the eye. As you can see on the side here, it's just a sea of faces made out of old plastics and rubbish. It's really clever. Some of them are very creative. Just reading the sign on the inside, and the artist actually doesn't want you to call these materials garbage. He wants them to be thought of as more, well, useful than that. He likes to think of things like plastics as materials to make things like this from. It's kind of cool. And of course, this wouldn't be the last recycling-based structure we would see that day. But first, we needed to find some wheels. Right then, we've got the bike, which is 150 baht for the day. So now, we're ready to get on the road. Let's do this. That morning, we had a 20-kilometre ride ahead of us, taking us from Thonsala on the south coast over to the north coast of the island, right through its mountainous centre. This direct route would take us along the most steep and winding roads that you can find on Koh Phangan, and what goes up must eventually come right back down again. Whoa! Oh my god! This is like a theme park ride! After about 30 minutes of driving from Thonsala, we eventually saw the coast once again, and I've got to say, this beach on its own was well worth the journey over. So, we've made it all the way across the island to Thong Nai Pan Beach. The first of the Thong Nai Pan beaches anyway. And look how beautiful it is. This is absolutely stunning. Thong Nai Pan Yai is the longest of the twin beaches, stretching 900 metres along the coast. It's a very secluded spot for people who want to escape the more crowded beaches of the south. And this really is a world away from Haad Rin. But to get a better view over it all, we decided to get back on the bike and tackle yet another incline.
That was a horrible hill.
It was very steep.
I regret everything.
Emma is very scared of hills on the bike, but she does them very well.
Thank you.
We have just parked up at the 2C Bar, which is on the east end of the beaches, and there should be a really incredible view from up here. And I can already see a glimpse of it right now, and it looks amazing. Well, that is pretty incredible. I'm a little bit blown away, to be honest. This is an amazing, amazing view. So the closest beach just down there is Thong Nai Pan Yai, and across there is Thong Nai Pan Noi, which is the smaller beach where we're staying tonight. But if you look just down there at the end of the closest beach, you can see the stupas of the temple that we've come to find. I'm getting excited now. So after a quick bite to eat, we headed back down the hill and towards our main target for the day. And the temple in question is fairly hidden away in a very residential area to the north of Thong Nai Pan Yai. After stopping for some directions, we finally found the entrance down some very quiet roads. And once again, it's safe to say that this area feels very disconnected from the wild parties of the full moon. So here we are at Thong Nai Pan Temple, the home of the beer bottle pagoda. And I think there's a collection of other things in here as well, like dogs, and also a monastery and some other pagodas to look at. So let's go and take a look, if he stops having a go. You okay? You guarding the temple? Yeah. Wat Thong Nai Pan is the spiritual centre of this part of the island. Many of the locals around pitch in to help with the cleaning and upkeep of the many temple buildings. And you can find many different Buddhist shrines here, as well as a free public library right in the centre. Because it stretches across a fairly large area, the whole place feels more like a campus than a temple, where the white structures shine bright against the natural surroundings. So just as you walk into the temple through this main white archway, there's a sign and it gives you some information about the beer bottle temple. It says it's the largest beer bottle pagoda in the world. It used over 6,000 bottles and it stands at over 18 metres high, so should be easy to spot. Wow, what a beautiful and peaceful place this is. It sort of opens up into this lovely garden. And there's a Buddhist library over there and a few Buddha statues. And I think we need to head this way to go and find that beer bottle temple, but there's a lot of other things to see here as well. There's so many little nooks and crannies of this temple. It's really interesting, so peaceful. But straight up ahead, I can see what we've come to look at. And wow. The beer bottle pagoda of Thong Nai Pan was built in 2019 based on an idea from one of the temple's monks. He started by asking local businesses to donate as many beer bottles as they could, and as you can imagine, that was quite easy for the bars and restaurants on Koh Phangan. Over the next few months, this place was built and the project is still ongoing, with the island's many parties offering plenty more materials for further construction. Well, here it is. We've found the beer bottle temple, and it's actually pretty cool, you know. And you can actually walk right inside, so let's go and do that now. Wow. Well, this really is quite impressive. You can see that it really is Chang beer bottles that are sort of embedded in cement. There's a few Leos in there as well, and a few clear glasses, but it gives it an amazing effect in here. The way the light comes through the green glass. It's quite something. Very, very cool. And when you look up as well, I think that's the most impressive thing. This must have taken some building. Pretty awesome, you know? Well, it looks like it's not only that one pagoda that's made out of beer bottles. They've actually made a few more smaller ones here, so we're just climbing up to have a look. There must have been a lot of bottles on Koh Phangan for them to use. All those full moon parties. There it is once again, look. It's completely made out of beer bottles. Well, at least partially. These are beer bottles as well. Hello. And here we are, right at the top here. You get this amazing view out to the ocean and down onto the temple as well. What a cool place. There's basically nobody else here apart from a few dogs. Saw a couple of monks. It's very, very peaceful. It's a great place to come. I'm glad we made the trip over, to be honest. So from what I understand, most of these beer bottles were donated to the temple by local businesses. Obviously Koh Phangan is very famous for its full moon parties, half moon parties, waterfall parties. So there's probably a lot of beer bottles that are used on this island. So I think it's kind of a poetic thing to have something like this at a temple on Koh Phangan. You know, drinking and partying is a part of the spirit of this island. And the monks who took on this project have kind of used that to make something that's very representative of the whole place. Judging by the size of the crowds after the pandemic, it does seem like the full moon party is here to stay. And honestly, it really does do some very good things for the local economy here. Hotels, bars and tour operators really do rely on the tourism that it brings every month, especially now. And really, I don't think anybody from backpackers to locals want to see the beaches look like this as a result of just a good night out. So hopefully, places like the Beer Bottle Pagoda are a little reminder to be responsible and do your small part in making sure places like this stay beautiful for generations to come. We are now back at the hotel room after a brilliant day on Koh Phangan. And to be honest, I don't know if I would ever have come to this part of the island if it wasn't for hearing the story about that beer bottle temple. So it just goes to show that sometimes you should seek out those weird, strange sites because you never know what else you might find. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Next time, we continue exploring this amazing island in search of one of the best and most terrifying viewpoints in all of Thailand.